technology can be used for good or bad. It could be a tool or a weapon.
I am very excited today to be speaking with director Dylan Reibling, the filmmaker behind The End of the Internet. Um, Dylan, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate this.
All right, thanks for having me.
The End of the Internet is a fascinating documentary. It really is. I mean, this is a film that gets into the dark web corner. That just sounds like a bad pun. Dark corners of our use of the internet and what the internet is to our culture. But where did it come from? What drew you in?
So, I my beat is technology and politics, and so that takes me to interesting places. I spend a lot of time in networks of hackers and just trying to get a sense of sort of what's going on beneath the hood of the technology that we use every day. Um, and I was at a conference almost 10 years ago, and someone pulled me aside, a hacker pulled me aside and said, hey, listen, I know you're a filmmaker, you're interested in stories. There's a lot of talk about like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and all that stuff, but the real story beneath all this stuff is decentralization. I was like, okay, great, interesting, fascinating. Where do I go from there? And then that was it. I had to go home and start like doing my own digging and figure out like, well, what does this mean? And 10 years ago, there wasn't so much information about decentralization there, like in around the internet or like I'm not necessarily a technologist myself. Um, so I couldn't really like get a handle on it. I couldn't figure out the research. Then maybe like 6 months later, one of my contacts said, "Hey, Dylan, are you still interested in decentralization?" Yep, of course. What do you know? Uh, Basically, a friend of a friend said, "Hey, there's a gathering of like anarchist hackers on a on an abandoned mushroom farm outside of San Francisco. They're playing around with decentralized hardware, decentralized protocols, decentralized software. Do you want to get in contact with them?" I said, "Sure." 2 weeks later, I was camping out on this abandoned mushroom farm in Silicon Valley, hanging out with these people who were playing around with decentralized technology. And like that was like my crash course, just figuring out what is it, how does it work, and what are the values behind it.
Well, can we talk about? Let's talk about the internet. I want to talk about decentralization, but let's talk about the internet here first. I mean, for the vast majority of the population, we just use it as an everyday device. We don't put generally too much thought into what it means to us. So based on your research, based on your study of it from this angle, what does the internet represent to us?
Well, it's actually a really interesting thing. Like one of the challenges with making a film like this is uh, like how do you talk about how do you talk about technology without getting into the nuts and bolts that like causes people's eyes to glaze over, you know? Like uh I think you're right. It's something that we use every day. Um and you don't need to have like a master's degree in electrical engineering uh to know that. I think that general people generally have a sense that the internet, there's something off about the internet that we have. Like, I think there's like a general sense of dissatisfaction with the internet that we have. And so, like, I see it, I think everyone kind of sees it as this communication infrastructure, right? Like a telephone. Um, it's a way, it's like a medium for communication. So where does this sense of dissatisfaction come from? Uh, the people that I follow in the film, like I think it's really hard to name the problems with this infrastructure, except for the people in my film who say like actually it's a problem with the problems that we're experiencing have to do with this concept of centralization, that the powers of the internet are increasingly becoming concentrated in the hands of a smaller and smaller group of monopolies. These are the corporations that exert corporate control over the internet. These are the platforms that sort of dictate the terms by which we can use the internet, what you see, what you hear, who you're connected with. These are the internet service providers who are like really who exert control over how much you can see and when. Uh, so yeah, and I felt like this idea of like, oh, if we look at it from the point of view of consolidation of power, all of a sudden that starts opening up some avenues of answer as to like why we're dissatisfied.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is interesting when because again, we don't think about the grander story. We just think about whether or not we can check our email.
Yeah.
Uh, and for us as a population, it's so easy for us to, well, if you, for lack of a better term, sign on to the terms and conditions without reading them. Um, and one of the things I thought was interesting about this film is it talks about the idea of decentralization as a form of resistance. Can you talk about that and actually tell our people what it means, what the decentralization in the internet means?
Well, I mean, decentralization is really sort of defined by like an opposition because I mean the bottom line is Um, centralization is something that is very powerful. The reason why we've ended up with the centralized internet that we have today is that concentration of power is actually very efficient. It does a lot of heavy lifting for us. The example that everyone uses is with email. Like one of the problems that we noticed with email, like, I don't know, like 20, 30 years ago, was that, I mean, you could probably remember days when your inbox would just be flooded with spam, right? Spam emails. And a lot of people, myself included, have switched to Gmail. Why? Because they have amazing spam filters. Now, Gmail is a centralized organization. It's run by Google. And so they're able to, have a full network, like a scaled up internet network where they can filter out not just emails for you, but emails for everyone across the network. So in that case, it's like centralization can be very powerful. But, with that comes like other examples of consolidated power where um, like I don't get to control the algorithm that shows me different feeds on Twitter or X, the everything app. I don't get to control what I see on Facebook or the algorithm um, that shapes what I see on Facebook. So, and the reason why is because there is a centralized, consolidated platform making these decisions for me. So decentralization is a way of saying like, oh, wait a second, like, is there a way to do some of these things where we're not dependent on a central critical force? And so, resistance is sort of built into that mechanism.
It's interesting because I know the film focuses on Urbit as the potential spoiler death of the internet, if you will, as we know it, certainly. But I would love to hear from you. What are the pros and cons of this other system? Because the film does show that decentralization in this way also comes with its drawbacks. And is that a better way for us?
Well, yeah. So this was a dynamic that came up in the making of the film because, like, when I first encountered the idea of decentralization, I was talking with a lot of idealistic people who were like, "Yeah, we can build systems like blue sky where there's no central point of control." People were using decentralized you see in the film, there's a person who's using decentralized protocols to preserve access to sensitive information, like news about democracy in Hong Kong. Those were being taken offline by centralized censorship services in China, and a decentralized service was used to preserve access to information that, you know, government organizations may not want preserved. I got first taken up with this idea of decentralization as a way forward. And the further I got into the story, I realized like technology uh, is a tool, and like any tool, it can be uh, technology can be used for good or bad. It could be a tool or a weapon, right? And we can see that like in the case of Urbit, and not even just with Urbit, but like decentralization, someone in the film talks about it like it's actually like a tool that, terrorist cells use, right? In some cases we do like uh, centralization in terms of like what are cooperative values that we all, appreciate or want to work toward. Decentralization can be very alienating as well. It's like you can, uh, the, trying to think the right way to say it. Maybe going back to the idea that like every technology can be like a tool and a weapon. Um, in some ways, that was actually quite good for the film in that like if the film was just all about how great decentralization is, it could have been a very flat film. But adding in this other layer of like, it's not just utopia. There are, you know, parallel mirror world dystopias that come along with the use of this tool, and that ultimately, um, it's up to us to determine the futures that we want and how we achieve them. And it's not just a technological solution that will provide the future that we need. It's something, it has to be people using tools.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's ultimately the greatest struggle with so many things is that we are flawed and broken as we can turn anything, uh, use anything negatively, shall we say. But and certainly this is a wonderful documentary to start conversations on the
Mhm.
way the role of the internet in our world. So Dylan, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you about the film, and I wish you the best.
All right, thanks for checking out. Yeah, no, this was good.
Great. Thanks, Dylan. Have a great day.